not the first time as Liverpool win 3-0, taking all 3 points over their bitter rivals. What does it mean at the top of the Premier League table? Well, early days, but still, Manchester City and Liverpool 9 points from their first 3 games. More on this one. We'll welcome back ex-Liverpool man Luis Garcia, Frank Leboeuf, the World Cup champion, joining the show.
Oh, don't mention it.
Oh well, we gotta let him. We gotta mention it because we know he never will. Actually, Frank, I'll start with you. We don't want to be too brutal on a legend here, but Casemiro in that first 45 minutes. I mean, how bad was that?
Leave him alone.
Yes. I know Bruno Fernandes tried to make him not guilty because it's a collective sport and naming one player, it's harsh in the football world. But the truth is, the 2 mistakes, the 2 loss of the balls came from him, and no reaction again. And we saw that last week from the Manchester back line, where they're nowhere near it, they don't know where to stand. The first one, as Stevie mentioned, nobody in the far post, and the second one, they lose the ball. Menu that doesn't follow, the centre back don't look at Diaz, and Salah delivers something absolutely fantastic with the outside of the foot. And yes, Casemiro is guilty. I think it was good the first 20-25 minutes, and he went down physically, and it's when he lost the balls. And that's where you have to have a second thought if you are Ten Hag. Can he be the player who can play, games after games and serve the club at his best, like he was doing for Real? It's impossible for me. So it would be harsh to only criticize him, but it's a fact that the 2 first goals is because of him.
Stevie, I've never seen you so ready to defend a Manchester United player. My goodness, are you okay?
Casemiro's won everything. Apart from the World Cup, this guy's won everything.
Sure, but we're talking about today's game.
Was he good? No, he wasn't. Did he give 2 passes away? Yes, he did. But why is everybody jumping on Casemiro? What happened to this? We win as a team and we lose as a team. What happened to that? Everybody's jumping on him.
So who are we jumping on?
And by the way, did you see the second goal? After the ball was given away, which Casemiro gave away, they had 6 defenders. 6 defenders. When Mo Salah had the ball at his feet and he was facing Dalot up, they had 6 defenders, including Dalot, and if you want to throw the goalie in as well. So if your midfielder gives the ball away, you've got a back line that has to defend sometimes, and they didn't defend.
Was he not their biggest problem today?
Man United's biggest problem today was Manchester United. I actually felt sorry for Casemiro because you could tell the camera, every time it went to a close-up of him, you could tell he was embarrassed because he set such high standards over his career. And he's struggling. But this is a Man United problem. This is an Erik Ten Hag problem. Because this game, after the initial 10-15 minutes, was so embarrassingly easy for Liverpool, it was frightening. And they had a couple of chances here and there. But they were completely schooled all over the field, particularly in the middle of the park. Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai. The movement of Jota, the movement of the wide players, how Liverpool passed it, how they defended a little deeper with the 2 sitting midfielders, Gravenberch and McAllister a bit deeper, but still getting forward with the same pace when they win it, like Jurgen Klopp's side. It was nice and balanced from Liverpool. Yes, we can talk about superstars at the twilight of the career, having bad days in the office, and he did. But this is not a result of Casemiro playing bad. This is a result of the mediocrity, a continuation. And bear in mind, they've got 3 points out of 9. This is their second defeat. This is a continuation of the conversation we had at the end of last year about Erik Ten Hag. And if this continues after the international break, this conversation will not go away. It will not go away. Now, he's got Agati to come in, who was there and then got on a flight for Uruguay. He's got Delet, who got some game time. He's got some changes he can make. But if he doesn't get results, and quickly, the conversations that we rightly were having towards the end of the season about his job are going to be back in his face within weeks. And that's not Casemiro's fault. That's Erik Ten Hag's fault. That's his team's fault. That's his team's performance. That's on the manager. And he's thrown it out there about basically saying,
Everything was great. The structure was great. My tactics were great. People.
Well, the quote today is
people made mistakes.
Individual mistakes is what he pointed as the downfall today. Is that him throwing guys under the bus?
It's a lot of nonsense.
I'll give him something. He had no.
We just showed the 2 individual mistakes, right?
Right. What about the 70 minutes of Liverpool taking them apart? What about the fact they were all in for 5-10 minutes in the middle of the second half? Pass, switch of play, shot. Embarrassing. That was embarrassing. You can't butter this up any other way. We can all sit here and say, if Ugarte played today, if Scott McTominay hadn't gone to Napoli, they would have had legs in midfield. This would have been a different game. Don't be stupid. Liverpool schooled. Arne Slot is just in. He's got more to work with. He's got better players, but they schooled Man United today.
They were lucky it was only 3. I mean, we never showed the 2 misses from Szoboszlai.
Van Dijk was asked if it should have been 5 or 6. He said yes.
Well, it should have been. Both of them, I don't know why they didn't just put the ball in the back of the net. Salah's went 20 yards over the bar and Szoboszlai was just trying to be too clever. In terms of football, this game wasn't lost by Manchester United because they made a couple of mistakes. They got completely outplayed from, I've heard the boys saying 15 minutes in. I would say when Trent Alexander-Arnold's goal was disallowed, because up until then, it was a fantastic start from United. From that point on, this was men against boys, no question. An absolute schooling. And Ugarte might be coming in. He might wonder what he's been doing or what he's doing because they cannot change much other than Ugarte. Eriksen, you think Eriksen would have made a difference had he been on earlier? They take Casemiro off and they bring a kid on. For some reason, Kobe Mainoo does not get any criticism. This kid cannot defend as a midfielder. On the ball, he's fantastic. He's so silky. He never seems to give it away. He's got great vision. But defensively...
Oh, he did.
He doesn't... Defensively, he has no instinct how to defend. I hear Rashford's getting a bit of praise today because he ran up and down a couple of times to defend. Garnacho didn't do an awful lot of defending on the other side. How is Ten Hag going to make this team competitive? Because he doesn't have the players in his squad, other than, so far, Ugarte hasn't kicked the ball, but if you're relying on him to completely change this round, he's in for a shock.
Let's bring in Luis Garcia. Luis, you would have heard the question raised by Frank about Casemiro, whether he can still kind of do it. Do you think he can still do it at this point in his career, do the job that Manchester United needs him to do in the Premier League? And if not, do you think this Manchester United team can figure things out in the coming months?
I thought you were going to ask me about how Liverpool play, but I'm going to go for the Red Devils performance and Casemiro. Honestly, I think that Casemiro, yes, he can do it. He can do it. They regain, they battle, they play, they assist, they can score goals, they do everything. And of course, when you got 3 players that they are working for 90 minutes, that's something very important for any team. So I think that's the main thing today that we need to talk about. Of course, Man United, they will get it. They will find a way. But today, they just found themselves outplayed. They couldn't even manage the rhythm of Liverpool. And in the moment that they tried to arrive to that midfielder, the 3-4 midfielders, because even Diaz and Jota were working very hard to try to regain the ball, to press higher on the field. They just couldn't get out of their position. So we are talking about a 3-0, but as Steve was mentioning, it could have been 2 or 3 more goals.
I'm slightly the opposite here. I don't want to be down on a player, but at the end of the day, our job is to analyse. And unfortunately, and I thought he'd come back pre-season, Casemiro looked a little trimmer. Maybe he was. But I think it's an unfortunate consequence of just getting older. And the game gets quicker, is that I just don't think he can do it. I think he could maybe come in now and again in the odd cup game and maybe for suspensions, but I just think he can't do it. I just don't think he's going to get through in experience alone. I don't. I mean, you look at the work rate of that Liverpool midfield, you look at the work rate of the Manchester City midfield, you look at the work rate of the Arsenal midfield. If we're just talking about England, we're talking about these teams that United are aspiring to get back in amongst. You can't carry anybody in there. You can't have people that can't run about. It's not only he can't run about, he's making mistakes on the ball now. So that's the double-edged sword for him. And yes, Ugarte will play. I think we'll see Casemiro being phased out. But again, it goes back to the consequential decisions of giving a guy not a 3-year deal, but a 5-year deal on huge money. And so you're left with this sort of scenario where a player is struggling, but has what, I think 3 years left on a contract on huge wages. And so there's another problem for them. But the initial problem is not financial, it's on the field. And I think ultimately he's going to find himself playing less games and not more games, because he's at that time of his career now. He's just struggling, particularly in his position. His position for a decade plus has been covering every blade of grass, covering fullbacks, covering centre-backs, covering the fullbacks. And
there's nowhere to hide.
That takes its toll. Not only does it take its toll because you're probably working as hard as anybody in the team, you're the enforcer, which is what Luka Modric and Toni Kroos said when he left Real Madrid. Thanks very much for being the bodyguard. He was everybody's bodyguard. But it takes its toll. And he's at United now where he's exposed. He's exposed to poorer players who are making more mistakes. The game is more open, and he's getting left with huge gaps that he has to cover. He can't do it. And I think, unfortunately for him, and United, that is just a huge problem. But it's not their only problem. But from Casemiro's perspective, I honestly think we're going to see him in a United shirt less and less.
We find ourselves in a pretty familiar situation when it comes to Manchester United. What do you hear there?
You know, he was quoted before the game as saying, allegedly, that in his time at United, they had overshadowed Liverpool.
With their trophy count.
With their trophies.
Right.
Notwithstanding the fact that their general football, I get it, if you're just about winning the odd cup. Wigan won the FA Cup 2013, were relegated the same season. These things can happen. Greece won the Euros. It can happen. Cup competitions, it can happen. The real judgment of a team most of the time is over a 38-game domestic league season. They were 15.
Never lies, right?
They were 15 points, I believe, worse than the season before. 22 off Liverpool. They were horrendous last year. So the fact that he gets questioned in the manner in which he does, and I think these journalists are asking him more pertinent questions as every week goes by, is because he answered so ridiculous last year. His defence of performances was staggeringly unbelievable. Talking about a game at Brentford where Manchester City had also struggled, when they'd beaten them 3-1 and had absolutely pummeled them. Just making ridiculous statements, rather than, I think, coming out and saying, and being honest. Because, there's a lot of people out there, they're not the brightest, but most people understand. They watch it, they understand. Instead of just coming out and saying, look, we made some mistakes today, maybe I made some as well, we got outplayed, I've got a lot to work on, and we're going to go away after the international break, roll our sleeves up, and work on our weaknesses. But he there is basically saying to the journalists, you know absolutely nothing. We know everything because we can see it, and you know nothing. That's basically what he said.
Unfortunately for Ten Hag, the question was actually spot on. And so that's why he basically didn't... That's why he answered the way he did.
You've been in those shoes. What do you say there? If not what he said, what does the manager say?
You can't agree with him. You're not going to agree with the guy. You're going to go in the defensive because that's what you do. And that's what he did there. You heard his answers. His answers were nothing about football. All he said was, we won two cups and I feel bad for you. Because he couldn't come back at him with football knowledge because the guy's question was actually spot on.
Yeah.
It feels a bit like when, I think it was Sam Allardyce at the time, criticised, who's the Dutch manager that was managing it? Who was the Dutch manager at United in Holland recently?
Van Gaal?
Sorry, Van Gaal.
Yeah.
I had a little blank. It's been a long day. Kylian Mbappe scored 2 goals.
You did get that right.
Louis Van Gaal scored. Louis Van Gaal was questioned about United played more long balls than Sam Allardyce. And then Louis Van Gaal took it upon himself and his staff to go to a press conference, and his PR team were cringing as he rolled out these stats, basically taking the bait to what another manager had said.
I think he doth protest too much.
And it just feels that Erik Ten Hag is in a similar scenario, that he's got somewhat backed by his board in the summer, which was a surprise. And he now feels, maybe he doesn't, but I think he feels he's got a little bit more strength, a little bit more rope, and that he can still say these things. But ultimately, these results don't lie.
He needs to come up with another answer, because winning the FA Cup is getting old. Right. You can't keep saying that every single time.
The question is about progress, right? And basically, if there's progress being made. Frank, when you watch this, I mean, we have to make the argument they're moving backwards, if anything, right?
Yeah, but that's what we felt before the season, because we didn't see people arriving and giving this idea of progressing throughout the season. Nothing could come out from what we saw during the preseason and what we saw, especially from the last season. But it is what it is, and I'm with the guys. You know, if you want to answer or properly answer to the journalists, just say that you're going to work harder, that you're going to work on the weaknesses that you felt and you saw what was missing today or lacking, and you're going to work harder. And defensively is where you have to be stronger. In the middle of the park, of course. And you compare Liverpool and Manchester's midfielders. It's crazy. It's crazy how the others work so hard and are so clever, and how the others are really in the tunnel, and it's a complete blackout and they don't see anything. And defensively, you cannot argue with any journalist that you don't do the job when you lose the ball, because it's what we saw. We saw it last week, conceding like 2 goals, and today conceding like 3 goals in counter-attack, losing the ball in the middle of the park and not reacting defensively. And from there, hard to see that they're going to progress. Even after the break that we're gonna have next week, it's gonna be too short, and it might be too late. So good luck to Ten Hag and these beautiful answers.
I think this might sound strange, but I think they might actually be a little better this year. After all the things I've said, and the reason I say that is, I think they could be a little better and stronger against the rest. You know, from sort of 6th or 7th place down, where a lot of teams. Most of the teams they played last year, even in the bottom half of the league, home and away, they struggled against. They might have got some results, but they struggled against even some of the relegation teams. I think they will be stronger against these teams this year.
Based on what?
Based on the fact
how bad they were last year?
They got a better fullback. They got maybe a bit more strength at the back. They've got signed a midfielder. I do think against the other teams in the league. Now, this is not where United should be aiming. Right, and I said this at the start of the season. I think they'll be stronger against the mediocre teams than they were last year. I still think they're going to struggle big time against the top 5 or 6.
But see, that's the problem where Man United's at, because I'm struggling to agree with you. And so we're going to start arguing that Man United are going to be better than the also-rans. That's where United are. That we're sitting here talking about, we would have a conversation about whether they're going to be able to dominate the Fulhams who they fortunately beat. You know, they got beat at Brighton, who are going to be mid-table, no question. Your West Hams and all these other teams, we're actually going to have a conversation of, are they better than them? And there won't be a consensus. There'll be 3 on one side and 4 on the other side to whatever. That's where Man United are.
You know, where I'm
absolutely nowhere near the top of the table. No. We're talking about them being able to beat the also.
Are we talking about them top 4?
Oh, don't be silly. Where I'm coming from, wow. If people are not understand, where I'm coming
Europe the way they're going.
Where I'm coming from is, I don't think they'll get beat by 3 or 4 at home to Bournemouth this year,
right,
like they did last year. That's kind of where I'm at. I think they'll be better at that and probably will pick up more points and have less embarrassing games, but they are nowhere near. And you saw it today. And by the way, if you watched City yesterday play against West Ham, you could argue that was even slicker than Liverpool today. Probably was. So, you know, that bar is up there. Arsenal were not so good and had their own problems. But I'm just coming from the fact that we sat here last year and said, how can you get battered by them at home? How can you get battered by Burnley and take a wonder goal by Bruno Fernandes to win, but you got completely outplayed? I'm saying they're going to be stronger against those teams.
And I'm not convinced they will be.
I think they will be, but I think they are way out of their depth still when it comes to the big boys.